Let's have a look at this one from Moose on Caffeine, rating Gacha games endgame content from worst to best Gacha game endgame content lists. Okay, be interesting. I'm liking the idea of this one. So obviously the big games are probably going to be in here. Your Genshins, your Star Rails, your ZZZs, your Wuthering Waves. I'm hoping something like Arknights is going to be in there because as somebody who's only dabbled a little bit, I think it's got a really good endgame content. I think originally Star Rails felt like it had really good endgame for me. Wuthering Waves, controversial opinion, endgame content wise, it's not the best. You know, Depths was brilliant. Wish we had more of that. Whimpering Waste kind of sucks ass if you ask me. Terror Adversity kind of blows. I like holograms, but there's not enough done with them personally. I do like how they've improved on the way the holograms work and we're getting the new holograms that we get now, but I just wish there was some replayable ways and resets for holograms personally, because I think that's where Wuthering Waves shines. But anyway, let's get into this list then, shall we? From the worst to the best. All right, what we reckon's in here, chat? What we think's in the list? What's in the list, man?
Welcome back. In any gacha game that you play, endgame content is some of the most important content that exists.
Oh, nice.
Because
Okay.
after you're done with everything the game has to offer...
Bro's got Battle Cats in there again. Dude, he's not stopping the PR move for Battle Cats, is he?
which, with this genre, that'll probably happen quite frequently, there's nothing else to do. I hear quite a lot of people say that endgame content is unimportant, or it's just for
Which simulated universe is better though.
But that sentiment is incredibly incorrect, as endgame content is one...
Like, for me, I think Star Rail was one of them when... it felt like it started off kind of strong in that regard. It just doesn't feel like it ran with it for me. But then again, I haven't played Star Rail for like a year now, so I don't even know where it's at the minute.
The biggest drivers for player retention when content is dry. So in this video, we're going to take a bunch of gacha games like I usually do, and we're going to rank their endgame content from worst to best. We've got the most popular mainstream gacha games, as well as your guys' favorite, as well as my favorite gacha games in this video, so stick around. But
Battle
before we get
Cats.
started, we're getting very close to 10,000 subscribers, so make sure to like and subscribe.
All
Because
right,
I'm
let's
going
go.
to be doing a giveaway when we do, and you should also
Man,
join the...
It seems mad. I thought Moose had way more than 10,000 subscribers. Dude does make decent content. Don't agree with all of the opinions, right? But I think he puts out some quality H2O. Thought he had more than 10k subs, man. Hit that sub button, guys.
Sneaks Best Friend Discord server for a lovely community to hang out with. Now let's get onto it. So the rules are going to be as follows. I'm trying to make my ratings way less arbitrary and more detailed. So I've got a detailed rating system here. There will be a base rating of 1 out of 10 for each game for symmetry's sake, and 3 criteria, each with a score out of 3. So with a base rating of 1 out of 10, and if each criteria receives a 3 out of 3, the final score will be a 10 out of 10.
Okay.
The 3 criteria will be enemy quality, how well designed the enemies are, how fun they are to fight when it comes to mechanics and the amount of HP they have, as well as how frequently they are reused in the endgame content. Mode quality is in how well designed the modes are, how unique they are from each other, and how fun they are to play. The final criteria is FTP accessibility, which means we're going to talk about HP inflation and power creep again. Yay! This is a very self-explanatory.
I think they're all fair points. I think they're all fair points to have in there, right? You know? As three main focuses.
Criteria, and is also very objective, so no further explanations there. For the
Man, I think I have a bit of a different opinion. HP inflation on the front of it, right? From a simple point of view, it's bad. But I've spoke about this before. For me, power creep in itself can be done right in terms of the speed of it, how often older units get kind of made redundant, if they do get made redundant, and potentially how updates at later dates can bring up older units, you know, such as things like modules for Arknights, or just patches, or kit improvements, or a new character coming out and facilitating the improvement of an older character. I'm not necessarily one of these people that's just like, well, the HP of enemies has gone up, even though I don't think it's the best way to make content more difficult. I don't always think it means bad, because as characters come out and change the game, sometimes it's needed to tweak enemies, right? Now, that would be better if they were tweaked in a better way. So I suppose you can argue that it's bad, but I don't think it's just as that simple, personally. And that's where, like, and it's not even just that a character's more powerful, so enemies need to be to be able to take more hits. Sometimes just the way kits synergize together, it just, you know, it might even be from, especially from a mechanical expression game, it might be just mechanically, things can be done a bit quicker because of the way characters work rather than them being outright just stronger. I suppose you could argue that's still a strength metric in a sense, but you're always going to have that because characters will become very one-dimensional at the end of the day, won't they, then? If everything has to be so stringent. I think after a year or two, it's inevitable that there's going to be some kind of increase somewhere to facilitate interesting character progression, in my opinion.
Final rules: I'm not going to count events as endgame content unless it's basically the only content available in the game, and exploration is also not counted as endgame content. I will either be taking modes that the community considers to be endgame content, or I'll be taking any modes that exist and seeing if they fit the definition of content that is made to test your account.
Okay.
So again, exploration and most events, as well as any modes that buff you up to oblivion. So
HP inflation such as way only benefit the current banner characters. Yeah, agree with that.
HSR, for example, don't count. Oh, and the list is in order
gimmicks,
from worst to
basically,
best,
right?
just as usual. So, with all these rules out of the way, let's get started. We're going to start off with Limbus Company. And
okay.
This game is one of the most beloved gacha games.
Still yet to play this. I'm going to be playing this very soon. We've done chapter 8 now. We just got to finish off the story bit of it. We are going to play Limbus Company very soon. I'm really looking forward to it.
Of all time by its player base, they all collectively hate the endgame content, so it has two modes, Mirror Dungeons and Refraction Railways, the latter of which barely even exists. It only resets once a season, so around once every 7 months. The other mode, Mirror Dungeons, though, resets once every week. You can either do a hard Mirror Dungeon to get all the rewards, or 3 lower difficulty ones. Now, Mirror Dungeon is a roguelite mode, and unfortunately, it is one of those modes that really buffs up your account quite heavily. To the point where, in Mirror Dungeons, a lot of the progression your account can see inside of it is just clearing faster than before. However,
yeah, that's the kind of roguelike I'm not a fan of. I think a lot of roguelike modes fail in that sense, where it's just like, it's just you coming back with a little bit more of a kick, right? You got a bit more oomph in the hits, and it's just like you're basically doing the same thing but stronger rather than the content actually being different.
However, because Limbus Company has no other modes besides this and the railways, I'm going to have to penalize it to make up for that. Just a quick PSA though, while editing this video, 5 extra floors have been added to Mirror Dungeons in the name of Extreme Mirror Dungeons. However, I don't think they add enough to warrant a different rating than what I'm going to give. If
Again,
anything,
can't really speak on this, not played it yet, so...
to the mode quality section. However, I don't think I'm going to do that here. So,
okay.
To start off with enemy quality, in Limbus Company, enemies are very well designed. They have many different mechanics that you have to play around, and while I myself don't enjoy the combat in Limbus, and it actually was the reason I stopped playing this game because I'm a gameplay first type of guy, those who do...
I've never really... What is the issue with the gameplay? What is the issue with the gameplay? Because, like, I've heard nothing but positives about Limbus, right? But when anybody does kind of point out a weakness, people do often mention the gameplay. But what is it? What is the game? What is the problem with the gameplay?
Find the combat fun. Also find the enemies very well designed and fun to play against. However, since the railways rotate so infrequently, they have the same enemies for a whole season. The Mirror Dungeons mode also receives a lot of complaints about how repetitive combat feels inside of it, and to move around that, players started making their own challenges to even have fun in the game, like solo runs. In the end, I'll give it half credit for having very well designed
lot of
enemies.
Gameplay is hard to grasp as a new player.
Feel repetitive, so 1.5 out of 3. When it comes to mode quality, well, to be fully fair, Mirror Dungeons does have a few challenge achievements.
RNG, right, okay.
Gameplay. So, aside from players making their own challenges, they can also
tutorials used to be shit. Okay.
Challenges. However, that still didn't stop players from complaining about how repetitive Mirror Dungeons is. Refraction Railways isn't much better, again, because it rotates so damn slowly. My opinion, as well as the community's opinion, is the same. Both modes are incredibly boring. To give an example that appeals to a wider audience, imagine that in Honkai Star Rail, Apocalyptic Shadow and Pure Fiction didn't exist, and the MOC only rotated once every 4 patches or so, and the only other piece of content you could do was the Divergent Universe.
Is that a fair comparison? Again, not played Limbus, so I can't really say that.
It would get pretty damn boring, wouldn't it? Unfortunately, in this criteria,
people seem to be warming to him.
0 out of 3. When it comes to F2P accessibility, though, you can clear the game
repetitive.
with
Okay, you just mentioned that, yeah.
Again, remember that in Mirror Dungeons, you can do solo runs, and those solo runs could be with basically any character in the game. Refraction Railways is also very similar, allowing you to use so many different characters. Either way, you can also just get every single character in the game by just grinding. So, in F2P accessibility, Limbus Company will receive a full score of 3 out of 3. However, like we said, Limbus
And
will be
top-tier,
penalized
twice, I
because
wouldn't
Mirror
know.
Dungeons is the only endgame content that frequently rotates, but it's a roguelite mode that really buffs up your account, so I'm going to take away the 1 out of 10 base rating, which means Limbus Company will receive a final score of 4.5 out of 10. Unfortunately, the lowest on the list.
Okay, so mode quality is give a 0, enemy quality 1.5 edge free to play, so it's all in the free to play basically there. Fair assessment, chat? Is that a fair assessment or is that a little bit harsh? You have to play Mirror Dungeon for like 20 minutes to 1 hour every week. It's not that bad until you remember we've been doing MD for 2 years. Okay.
Next up, we've got Genshin Impact. Somehow, not the lowest on the list, even though I expected it to be. Genshin Impact has 3 modes, the Spiral Abyss, Imaginarium Theater, and Stygian Onslaught. The Spiral Abyss being your box standard tower mode with a pretty solid foundation, but handled pretty badly, just like the rest of the game basically. Solid foundation, terrible handling. Imaginarium Theater is a more...
It is true the game's got a solid foundation, right? I don't know if it's necessarily terrible handling for Genshin. I'm gonna be a defender here. I just think it could have been better, right? But for me, it's more about quality of life things with Genshin more than anything. Again, I haven't played Genshin for a while now, so I haven't even touched this Stygian Onslaught.
Advanced version of the Spiral Abyss, but not in a very good way. For example, you're restricted to only using a few elements and a few guest characters. Stygian Onslaught is definitely the best mode, by far in my opinion. It's similar to Honkai Star Rail's Apocalyptic Shadow, but it's much more of a whale mode at higher difficulties, which some players might not like. So let's start with enemy quality. Outside of Stygian Onslaught, enemies in Genshin Impact are very bad. They have very boring AI that feels inconsistent between enemies. Even then, there are no true parry and dodge mechanics, so you can never even benefit from enemies attacking you like you can in other games like Zenless Zone Zero. Some boss enemies also have invincibility windows that don't stop the endgame timer when they're active, like Magu Kenki waking up in the ruin serpent going underground. All of this combines to also mean that Genshin Impact's enemies, recent HP inflation put aside, have a lot of HP in relative to how fun they are to fight. They really are just punching bags with a few elemental checks here and there, which makes the combat so goddamn boring to me. In the Spiral Abyss and Imaginarium Theater, enemies are also reused so frequently, it makes doing these modes feel like such a chore.
Okay, to my Genshin peeps who are still playing now, do you agree with that in regards to the combat itself? Because, like, as I say, I haven't played Genshin for a while now, and I only got, like, just past Inazuma, so, like, I've dabbled with more of the endgame stuff, right? But I have not, like, I've not gone into it, because obviously I just didn't play the game all that much, really. But I had a lot of fun with Genshin, man, when I played it, you know what I mean? I really did. Like I say, I suppose I've got, with a lot of people who played, like, because I played Wuthering Waves hard, right, for like a year, right? And a lot of people in that community love to shit on Genshin. But, like, I never came out. I've never had this Hoyo hate for me, personally, right? Because I like Zenless Zone Zero. I loved Star Rail at one point. Now, don't get me wrong, I probably wouldn't have so much fun with Star Rail at the moment, because well, Star Rail is one of those games, if you take a break, it feels like a rough time to get back into anyway. But, yeah, man, like, you know, I had fun with it. I had fun with it, man. I did. Only did the beast when I used to play, and he wasn't that much of fun to me, so I don't know. Okay. Yeah, Genshin combat system is one of the best ever played, but hindered by enemy design. Okay. I didn't mind the combat was easy, but only had the spoil before I quit. Still enjoy the horror games myself. Some people just take them too seriously. I heard someone talked about Imaginarium Theatre being a massive resource sink because of how many characters you need to build because of the rotating reactions. Not sure what most players think. Like, for me, like, when it came to Genshin, like, I just started playing Star Rail. That's kind of what stopped me playing Genshin. It wasn't that I was like, I'm done with Genshin. I kind of like soft quit Genshin because I wasn't in this idea that I'm not going back to this game. I just started playing Star Rail hard, and then I just didn't go back. You know what I mean? And kind of the same thing happened with Star Rail with other games. But like with Star Rail, it was a little bit more of a writing was on the wall. I was starting to see things, and I was like, I think this is going to be rough in a few months' time. You know, yeah, I never left Genshin with any bad taste in my mouth, personally.
Looking at the enemy lineups for these two modes in all of 5.x, they're chock full of almost 2-year-old enemies released in Fontaine, which isn't that bad, but also super old enemies released in Sumeru and even Inazuma. Now, these two modes have a lot of chambers, which means that they're gonna want a lot of enemies to fill them up, so they end up reusing older enemies, but that just ends up making it feel like more of a chore to do. In Stygian Onslaught, though, the enemies have unique mechanics, and that's basically all I have to say about this criteria when it comes to this mode. So I'll give it a 1 out of 3, failing in 2 modes but doing pretty well in the third, or at least relatively well. When it comes to mode quality, then there's nothing really wrong with the Spiral Abyss like we said, other than the enemies it's filled with. Its mechanics are completely fine. With Imaginarium Theater, that's where it starts going downhill, as the mechanics can get very restrictive or have requirements that some accounts may not have, and while yes, it does incentivize building many characters, in a game like Genshin Impact, it ends up not being very enjoyable for many because of the elemental restrictions. Stygian Onslaught, on the other hand, is a pretty well-designed mode, unique enemies, higher difficulties for the whales, and actually well-designed challenges.
I feel like that when it comes to like the horizontal investment. I feel like, obviously, again, if you're newer to the game, I suppose this is an individual thing, but I wouldn't even think it's like so much. Obviously, I ain't played it, right? But to me, I'm like, I feel like if you've been playing the game sort of semi-regularly since then, you're going to have quite a decent amount of horizontal investment. Whether you got the right horizontal investment, I don't know. But you know what I mean?
In combat. The only bad thing about this mode is that it's still just a race against time, just like the other two modes, unfortunately. But the timer is also very short. It'll receive a 1 out of 3 here as well. Finally, when it comes to F2P accessibility, then while it's starting to get worse, you can still clear the game with many older units, and more skilled players can clear with almost any unit, except maybe Xinyan or something. Although, I do think, and you'll probably agree with me, that Genshin's player base is very casual,
you can borrow characters.
Increasing HP like they've been doing recently is very scummy, and cucks their player base even more than they've been doing over the years. But this video isn't about that, so I'll give it a 2 out of 3 here. I think it will definitely end up getting worse, just like it did with the 2 other Hoyo games that begin with Honkai. So Genshin Impact will receive a final score of 5 out of 10. Speaking of Honkai, we've got Honkai Star Rail up next, with its 3 modes, Memory of Chaos, Pure Fiction, and Apocalyptic Shadow. There's a rumored or leaked 4th mode coming, but I'm obviously not counting it. So Memory of Chaos is your box standard tower mode, Pure Fiction is the AoE mode, and Apocalyptic Shadow is the boss mode. And they all rotate one by one every 2 weeks. Nothing else I have to explain about them. So let's get right into it. When it comes to enemy quality, well, outside of HP inflation, Honkai Star Rail has incredibly simple combat, and while it used to have incredibly simple enemy designs, in recent updates they've definitely added more fleshed out mechanics outside the Apocalyptic Shadow.
That's
and
cool.
Even though a lot of those mechanics...
I think that's fair that it does have simple, because like, when it comes to like turn-based RPGs, like, you know, it is definitely more on the simple side of things, right? Simple doesn't mean bad though, right?
Certain characters way too damn much, it's still an improvement. But either way, Honkai Star Rail also reuses enemies so damn much, but I wouldn't say as much as Genshin, but that's mainly due to Genshin having 3 chambers for 2 halves in each stage, while HSR just has 2 halves for each stage. Pure Fiction also reuses enemies quite often, probably more than the MOC because there's more enemies on the field. However, both of these modes suffer from using many bosses way too many times, like Svarog and the bugs in the MOC, as well as Gepard in Pure Fiction, and they also suffer from another issue, which is that so many damn enemies are just reskins. Multi-billion-dollar company that's probably closer to multi-hundred-billion-dollar company here, and it's making enemy reskins. Genuinely pathetic. Enemies in the Apocalyptic Shadow are also
I do think that's a totally fair critique.
Used quite often, unfortunately, with Kokolia being the biggest offender, and when comparing it to Stygian Onslaught, I'm not sure.
It's like when you see stuff like that, then we go back to that conversation about the AI stuff, it's like, you know? It's like, it makes you worry, right?
The latter will start reusing their bosses too. I mean, probably. However, I do think I will excuse the reuse of enemies here because I'm very biased towards Apocalyptic Shadow because it's a very fun mode that I used to enjoy a lot. And the only thing really bad about it is the very obvious HP inflation. Now, even though newer enemies have been getting more mechanics, those mechanics are not only heavily catered to newer characters, but they still tend to use older bosses like Svarog in the MOC that have no mechanics whatsoever and are instead just a punching bag. And no, him throwing his arm to grab you is not a mechanic, it's just annoying. I think I'm going to give Honkai Star Rail a 1.5 out of 3 here.
It's definitely mechanic, but it is fucking annoying. I used to hate that.
Reuses enemies a lot, and with older characters they can feel like punching bags like in Genshin, but the Apocalyptic Shadow is way too good to ignore here. And I would also say Honkai Star Rail's enemies are more fun to fight than Genshin Impact's enemies, but that is subjective and some people would say otherwise. But since this is my list, I'm going to give Honkai Star Rail an extra 0.5.
One's a turn-based game, one's not, right? So
when it comes to
it's subjective anyway,
all
but you know.
three modes are effectively a race against time. However, they do play quite differently. Regardless of HP inflation and power creep, the mechanics of each mode are very fun when put in a vacuum. It's just the race against time factor that is shared between them which holds it back. If Apocalypse...
Hey, I ain't even going to get into that. You guys know my opinion on all that sort of stuff. I hate it, right? I hate timers, having an unlimited amount of time. You know, the difficulty in the end becomes all of that. It's just a forced way of kind of push combat. I'm just not a big fan of it, right? I'm just not a big fan of it. Major reason why I've been absolutely loving Arknights is because how many fights have we had now where there's been a timer, right? There was the Witch King. What else, chat? What else have I hit in that game now that's had a timer? It's so refreshing. So refreshing.
Shadow was more like the holograms in Wuthering Waves, where it focuses on the boss itself and its mechanics a lot more than the timer. It would have been a lot better, for example, but I don't see an issue with the MOC being a race against time because it's the standard endgame mode. So in the end, I'll give it a 2.5 out of 3 here. When it comes to F2P accessibility, this game will receive a whopping 0 out of 3 because, obviously.
We knew that was coming.
Honkai Star Rail's final score will be a 5 out of 10, just like Genshin Impact. Some people may reduce enemy quality even further or possibly penalize HSR for being so damn F2P unfriendly, but I think I'm satisfied with this rating. Next up, we've got Fate Grand Order. This is of course a story-based game, and it shows with its endgame content. However, I think it fares a lot better than Limbus Company, for example.
Again, another game, not played Limbus. I've not played Limbus, so obviously I haven't played the endgame as well. I've played a little bit of FGO, but very little, and it was on mobile, and I've not dabbled in anything beyond the very start of the game, so I can't comment on this one as well. So I'm going to need chat to let me know what the deal is here.
It doesn't really have any rotating endgame though, which is kind of rough. Its two main sources of content are completing the hardest story fights every time a new story chapter is released. And
I have heard that even though the gacha system's a bit rough, I've heard that you can go through the entirety of this game. Now, I don't know so much about the end game, but the entirety of the story pretty much with base units, right? Is that true? Like, the gacha itself's a bit rough, but you don't really even need to engage with it to get through the content, which is, if that's true, you can, yes. FGO never forced you to pull, though. Okay, yeah, so, all right then. Okay, yeah. I've heard that. Again, like I say, I've literally played, like, man, it's probably like an hour, maybe, on my phone. So, yeah, I don't know.
Is released with. Events have at least one challenge quest.
Might have to get a little creative, but you can do some wild stuff with FGO with low rarities. Okay.
When it comes to enemy quality, this game probably
gives you a lot
has
of
some of the
welfare.
most unique enemies out of any game on the list. It's a shame there's no rotating endgame content to make use out of all of them. Every playable character can potentially be an enemy, and they can use their playable skills on you in their enemy form. Of course, there are also non-playable character enemies, all with their own unique characteristics and mechanics that make them either weaker or stronger against certain characters. Other than that, there's not much else to say. I think that a 3 out of 3 here is a very good rating. When it comes to mode quality, though, well, since FGO has no rotating
and the one thing I will say about FGO, though, man, it looks like somebody projectile vomited the UI and the menus and just like the overall design of that sort of stuff onto the game. Like, it's vile. And I don't know why that hasn't been updated over the years. Like, you know, maybe they're just doing it for the nostalgia's sake, but oh my god.
Game content, this is where it's gonna struggle. However, its challenge quests and major story fights are still very well made. Each challenge quest has an enemy with their default mechanics, but also extra gimmicks on top of that. I guess kinda like Apocalyptic Shadow and Honkai Star Rail, but a lot more complicated. The most recent challenge quest on the NA version of Fate Grand Order is the Summer 2025 Events Challenge Quest. The short of it is that you need to kill the boss with a name that I'm never going to pronounce, and an outfit that I should probably censor because this is Fate Grand Order. But anyway, she has insane defense buffs that you have to kill all the enemies on the site to remove. Each enemy has their own different buffs and debuffs that they can apply, and in the end, it kinda starts playing like a puzzle, which I think is really fun. However, I really can't get over the fact that all you do in this game is level up your characters and do the story quests and challenge quests. So, despite how fun these modes can be, a 0 out of 3 is the only rating I can give here.
Is that fair?
If you don't care about always having something to do, though, it's definitely a 3 out of 3 instead. When it comes to FTP accessibility, then there's two sides to Fate Grand Order. Now, you can beat the content in this game with basically any unit, but it's really tough to beat the game with the units you want to beat it with, because the gacha system is so ass, which I've already spoken about multiple times on this channel. Although, because you can still beat the game with skill and skill only,
okay.
I'll give it a 2 out of 3 in the end. So, Fate Grand Order's final rating will be a 6 out of 10. Yes, somehow higher than Genshin and HSR, even though it has no rotating endgame content. It just goes to show how repetitive and unfair these two games
Okay.
can objectively be. The next game on the list is Epic 7, and just like a couple other games on the list, it has so many endgame modes it's kind of a...
Again, another game I'm not going to be able to get into too much here, because I've literally probably played less of Epic 7 than I have of FGO, so okay.
Absurd. Of course, it is a PvP game, but still has many PvE elements, and while people may already cast it aside, I don't think that's very fair to this game. Its multiple PvE modes include the Abyss, Rift, and Trials of Constellations. The Abyss is a non-rotating tower mode with 120 floors and an extra 20 harder levels. The Rift is one of the game's most efficient ways to farm, and Trials of Constellations is also another way to farm, with small roguelike elements, but it's also a lot more rigid than Rifts. Now, since I don't have much experience with Epic 7, I'll only be focusing on these 3 modes. Epic 7 players can make their own judgments, and any rating changes by you guys in the comments would be very much appreciated. But
Epic 7 is one of those games that keeps, every now and again though, I'm just like, man, I really want to play him.
The Epic 7 Glazer. And bear in mind,
Ethereum restart stopped me getting into it last time, and then Ethereum restart become what it is. So I'm like, should I just play this?
Now, the Abyss doesn't rotate, however, each level is unique with its own set of mechanics and enemies. That may sound bad for F2P players, but hang on for the F2P accessibility section in a bit. Rift rotations come in seasons, with each season rotating around once every 6 months, and each season has its own boss. You do fight the same boss for the whole season, unfortunately, so as a mode widely considered as endgame by the player base, it does end up just being something that you have to press the fun button for. When it comes to Trials of Constellations, then while these reset monthly, every reset has the same 5
really, being
bosses.
a PV,
there are other...
Being a PvP game, I suppose you can have the... Obviously, if you're a PvE player, you're not going to think like that, but I suppose you can have the excuse of like, well, I suppose I can let it slide a little bit because the game's a PvP game, right? So
modes with more unique enemies and mechanics like Halls of Trials though, so Epic 7 doesn't really fail here. I'll give it a 2 out of 3 when it comes to the enemy quality. If anything, the mechanics this game has definitely make up for any lack of unique enemies. When it comes to mode quality, then first off, there's always something to do in Epic 7, whether PvE or PvP, but a lot of those things that are always available to do focus a lot more on PvP. While the more important PvE
That's fair though, it is a PvP game, right?
Or at least not as frequently as other games.
End of the day, if you are going to be a PvP game and you want that to be a heavy part of it, you need to lean into that, right? Which is going to mean that the PvE side of things is going to suffer, right? Now, if you're a PvE enjoyer, it's one of those games where it's maybe it's just not for you, right?
Now, how fun these modes are is the same story as earlier, since enemies are kind of repetitive in them. I mean,
Playing Epic 7 felt like having a second-hand job at times.
Just to farm to do better in PvP
I think that's
content, but in this list, we're only rating PvE content. Since they're
the negative of a PvP game, right? It's the cross it has to bear in a sense.
Since the PvP content this game has to offer is actually pretty damn good. Here, I'll give it a 1.5 out of 3. When it comes to F2P accessibility, then Epic 7 isn't really a saint, but it's not really a demon either. First off, since a lot of the game's PvE endgame content relies on farming, you can have a guess that so much of that is because of RNG gearing systems. You do need a lot of equipment and gacha characters in Epic 7, and if we consider the Abyss to be the benchmark of how good the endgame content is for F2P players, then it's definitely not the best. If somebody is able to clear the Abyss with only F2P units, it will require some RNG luck during the battles themselves. However, the game isn't predatory either, giving you a lot of currency and time to get the units that you do need to beat the content. You can actually farm in modes like hunts, where it can sometimes drop bookmarks or sky stones, which is the pull currency in the game. Although,
I was gonna say, I've got no idea what the fuck that is.
2 out of 3 here. I think that's fair. So in the end, Epic 7
Gacha plus PvP is always a straight no for me because it's the biggest pressure to go gamble and waste money if you want to be competitive. I think that's fair, right? Like, it's like, you know, when Ethereum dropped, right? There was the hope that they were gonna like potentially, because I can't remember now. Was it? I can't remember exactly how it worked now, but what we wanted, people really want, well, at least what I wanted. I wanted a separate like weekday system where it's like dupes are out the way, right? So it allowed for just some free to play chill, and then on the weekends, that's where the sweats go. And if you're free to play, you can just step back and just, you know, not be a part of that, like, or have like the way, I don't know, like have a season where like it's on and off, like 2 weeks on, a week off, 2 weeks on kind of thing. Something like, you know, where it just gave a little bit of freedom to be. Now, I don't know if there's anything like that now, because again, I played the beta and I didn't play the game since launch, right? But yeah, I think it's inevitable that it's just a place for whales, right? Otherwise, you're just going to be, like you say, it's going to become a second job for you, isn't it?
7 will have a final score of 6.5 out of 10 for its PvE endgame content. The next game on the list will be Wuthering Waves, with Tower of Adversity, Whimpering Wastes, and the holograms as well. I think holograms are some of the best endgame content Wuthering Waves has to offer, with them simply being a skill check. The 5-minute timer will
Based. Again, I think they should have done so much more with holograms. I know we've got it the way the hologram is now. You've got the place where you get to and they add holograms to it. But I think we should have had so much more. I know that people were talking about the idea of having the, you know, the holograms are a base around the map. Those resetting, people were like, oh yeah, but people will just want to one and done that. They don't want to go back. Well, I'm like, bro, that's the best combat in the game. If you got some rewards for that, it doesn't have to be pool currency. Just some like mats for it, potentially echoes, whatever it might be, right? I would love that to reset. I would also like a harder mode on the holograms where you can potentially have, you know, you can tweak it so you can add debuffs, buffs, make the enemies more aggressive, make them play slightly differently, maybe have more HP if you want them, more defense, all these different things, potentially switch like attributes, so like you can use different units against them in different ways and just have fun with it, really. I was a little bit disappointed they didn't do that, because outside of the depths of Elusive Realm, holograms for me is what Wuthering Waves is about for me, in regards to they didn't work on it enough, right? They didn't flesh it out enough, in my opinion. But just in terms of that combat, it is a skill check. You can get one tapped. The timer, there's a timer, but it's kind of inconsequential. I'd rather it just not be there at all, right? And just make it even harder and more aggressive. And as I say, have that extra mode where you can really tweak things. But I think it was just another part of the game that had so much potential and just kind of just was never really advanced upon, which is a bit of a shame.
Never run out unless you're fighting something way above your level. So, the Tower of Adversity is your box standard tower mode, and Whimpering Waves is just Wuthering Waves' answer to HSR's Pure Fiction. So, a mode where you get hordes thrown at you and you have to defeat them in a certain amount of time to get a score. So, yeah, let's get right.
Just not a fan of either, honestly. I'm just not a fan of either. I just think Whimpering Waves, I know apparently, again, I haven't played for a while, it's improved. I just don't think it was a great mode, full stop, right? I just don't. You know, Tower of Adversity, it's dull as fuck, man. It's just dull. I just don't find it enjoyable at all. The one mode I did like was, what was it? The Trials Crisis mode or whatever it was, you know, where you could add the buffs and the debuffs and all that sort of stuff, kind of like a risk system. That was pretty cool. And again, Depths of Elusive Realm. Yeah, these two modes for me. Not it, Chief. Not it.
Into the ratings. When it comes to enemy quality, unfortunately, Wuthering Waves also reuses enemies quite often. From all the stages I've looked through, it seems to be just as much as Honkai Star Rail. Although, Wuthering Waves is just over a year old, so they don't have as many enemies as games like HSR and Genshin. However, I don't see why we need to be fighting a 1.0 boss in the TOA more than a year later. Now, my biggest complaint here is that the enemies in Wuthering Waves can be really fucking annoying. Now, to be completely honest, that is probably a skill issue, but I'm also playing ZZZ while having nearly zero complaints about the enemies other than them having a few invincibility windows here and there, while in Wuthering Waves, so many enemies are genuinely super irritating to fight. Other than a few extremes like Lorelei being a little and if you don't kill her fast enough, she enters the most annoying phase a boss has ever had in any recent ARPG, and Thundering Mephis thinking he's Virgil, but really he's just a little...
I don't mind Thundering Mephis at all. Actually, I found that shit fun, man. That was actually really fun for me. You know, it's not like a what's it boss, it's a mat boss, but you know, Due, fucking hated that fight. I remember people telling me, that's a skill issue, man. You just need to grapple to close the distance. Like, bro, fuck off. I don't want to fight a fight where every 2 seconds, yeah, exaggeration, bro's fucking off and flying around like he's the spaghetti monster. Like, no, that's not fun, man. Stop creating monsters that beeline away from you. I don't want to fight fights like that. I don't want to do it. I want the enemy to come at me. I don't want him to be like, catch me if you can. That's not fun at all, man. I don't care what anybody says.
I hope your whole family has a nice Christmas.
Wuthering Waves really likes to punish the player, and again, you can call that a skill issue as much as you want, but to me it ends up being way more annoying than it is fun. Obviously, Wuthering Waves won't get a 3 out of 3 here because it reuses enemies, so
I think it becomes unfun because of timers, right? That content is fine without the timer, but again, when it comes like to Whimpering, when it comes like especially the tower and that, like it's not difficult content. That's not. You're just fighting a timer. That's the end game. That's the difficulty. Do you know what I mean? I think that's why I do like Dex, and that's why I do really like well, that Trials Crisis mode. I forgot what it was called now because that didn't have a timer. But like the timer really doesn't really matter in the holograms, right? That's that again. Timers suck, man. I don't mind them here and there. Too many gacha games use them like candy, man. This is like they're everywhere.
Frequently, and because I think fighting the enemies can be genuinely quite frustrating, I think I'll give it a 1.5 out of 3. However, that is very subjective, and if you don't think Wuwa's enemy design is annoying, I think a 2 or 2.25 out of 3 here is perfect. I also gave HSR a score of 1.5 out of 3, and a lot of people might get really mad about that, and understandably so. However, they have the same score, but for different reasons. Again, if you don't think Wuthering Waves' enemies are annoying, I think they deserve a 2 to 2.25 out of 3.
That's the thing, this gets a little bit subjective when you're talking about it. You can look at, I suppose, mechanics of the enemies, but when you're looking at it, is this fun? That is a subjective thing, right?
As a tower mode is completely fine. It's a little more unique with its cost system than the MOC and Spiral Abyss, but Whimpering Waves is pretty boring, I won't lie to you. But I also think that the holograms are some of the best modern endgame content available, being a pure skill check rather than anything. Even if some enemies are annoying, but we're talking about mode quality here, not the enemies themselves. Honestly,
hey, Fish Raid, what's going on, guys? What's going on, Ace? What's going on, Frog Pappy? Welcome to the stream, guys.
I think a rating of 3 out of 3 here would have been a very heavy understatement.
Ace, so thank you very much for the raid. Appreciate you. How's he going? How's he going?
3 here. I also gave HSR a 2.5 out
Shout out to our
of 3
two traders.
That sounds insane, but I think that Pure Fiction, despite still being relatively boring, is still much more fun than Whimpering Waves. Either way, I think Wuthering Waves has a lot of...
Welcome to the stream. We're just watching a list from worst to best of the ranking of endgame content in gacha games from Moose on Caffeine at the moment. We're doing a bit of react slop at the moment because I'm having the post JT83 clarity of beating the stage E1. Got to get it in there. Got to get it in there, chat. I've got to get it in there.
Potential with whatever upcoming mode they may be cooking. When it comes to FTP friendliness, then there was a character shilling drama with Whimpering Waves a couple weeks ago, but honestly, I think it's just a fluke. I'm gonna give Wuthering Waves the benefit of the doubt here, because other than that, you can clear with all units in the game, and the echo investment needed to do so is miles below any relic or artifact investment needed in HSR or Genshin, on both older and newer characters. I would say that Wuthering Waves is like 70% skill and 30% echo and gacha luck, and for reference, Genshin Impact is 80%.
I do think that's slowly changing though. Again, I haven't played since 2.2, so I'm going off, obviously, I've played the game for a long time, right? I know the game, and I'm going off like people who play the game and watching videos of people that the potential for that to be like going on down the wrong direction definitely looks like that is real, right? But I think that's fair, right? You know, really, with Wuthering Waves for the most part, man, hyper invest into your DPS, man, and you know, you don't really have to build all your units out to the max. You know, some good echoes, build out your tree pretty decently, you know, and you are really good to go when it comes to the tower. That being said, don't make the tower any better though. It's boring.
Luck and 20% skill, and HSR is like 100% luck.
Hi, no worries, Aisha. Have a good day. Thank you very much for the raid as well.
3 out of 3 here. So Wuthering Waves' final score will be an 8 out of 10. Next up, we've got Zenless Zone Zero, the fourth and final mainstream gacha game, or at least what I would consider to be a mainstream gacha game. It's definitely the Hoyo game with the best endgame content, at least. It's got 2 rotating endgame modes, Sheer Defense and Deadly Assault. Sheer
like
Defense is the
endgame.
box standard tower mode, and Deadly Assault is everything Stygian Onslaught and Apocalyptic Shadow should have been, and what a rotating holograms mode should look like. There's also the simulated battle trials, which are some of the best modern endgame content available. Already, ZZZ is getting glazed, so let's get right into the ratings. When it comes to enemy quality,
I'm in for a little bit of ZZZ glazing because he gets too much hate, man. I don't get the ZZZ hate. I really don't. Like, there's so many and this is not just like, you know, your typical Hoyo haters. Like, ZZZ just seems to get so much hate, and I don't get it personally because I like the game and I think the end game content's pretty fun as well.
Then ZZZ is going to get some pretty good credit here. First of all, unfortunately, they also do reuse enemies quite a lot. Probably a little less than HSR and WUA, but also I wouldn't be surprised if it was just...
We'll read the comments in a bit.
The same, but definitely not as much as Genshin.
ZZZ above
just
WUA?
like Wuthering Waves, it's only a little over a year old, so it will by default get a better score than both Genshin and Honkai Star Rail when it comes to this. Other than that, when it comes to how fun the enemies are to fight, then they are incredibly fun. I am absolutely in love with Zenless Zone Zero's combat.
Thank you as well. People shit on its combat so much, right? You know, it's not as nuanced as it could be. I think it's satisfying, man. It's punchy, it's fast-paced, it feels visceral. I enjoy it, man. It's you know, I find it a lot of fun, man. I do.
The enemies are part of the reason why. They attack at just the right frequency and difficulty that they need to. The enemies also have a very good HP to mechanics ratio, again because you benefit from all the parrying that you do. The only bad thing about Zenless Zone Zero's enemies off the top of my head is that some of them, like Miasmic Jane, or some second phase bosses like the Dead and Butcher, have invincibility windows, but other than that, I think ZZZ currently has the best enemy design in any mainstream ARPG, or mainstream Gacha in general. I'll give Zenless Zone Zero a 2.25 out of 3 here. When it comes to enemy quality, they do reuse enemies a bunch, but probably not as much as the other mainstream games, and the enemies are super
ZZZ hate is just a leftover hate from Genshin Impact.
Like Wuthering.
I think it is, and do you know what? Honestly, I think a portion of the WUA community turned to focus towards, and I'm not just talking about CCZ, I'm talking about the community as well. It seemed like they turned the ire towards ZZZ after ZZZ's first anniversary, because a lot of people shit on Wuthering Waves' first anniversary, and it felt like a bit of reaction to that, because that wasn't able to be so defended like other parts of the game potentially are. That it felt like they went, because like I hear that a lot where people and this is not just from people like Saint, right? I've heard it from other people as well in the community saying that Zenless had one of the worst first year anniversaries in Gacha, and I'm like, what are we smoking here? Like, what? That's crazy. I just do not agree, man. You're talking shit. I'm sorry, you are, right? And I feel like there's definitely was a little bit, it was like the Eye of Sauron, man. It was cast as ZZZ right after that. Because I think maybe there was some people who was like, and not even ZZZ players as well, where people was like, Zenless is going to be the one that saves us. It's going to be the gacha game that has a good first year anniversary, right? And I think it did a pretty okay job, right? Wasn't anything insane, but I think they did a pretty good job of it. And I do feel like a bunch of people, like it became like the punching bag. It was like, oh, right, that's a small kid. Let's go pick on them. We're going to steal its lunch money. You know what I mean? You know, it's kind of how it felt. Stop saying Saint like he's some cute little boy. I don't realize to do that.
Waves, it does only have 2 rotating modes, unfortunately, Chiyu Defense being the standard kill them as fast as possible mode, which is fine because it was also the first mode, but Deadly Assault also brings a different formula because you actually get performance points in it that aren't simply based on doing as much damage as possible, meaning that somebody who can't exactly do enough damage to fully get the score required to 3-star can supplement that with taking advantage of the other ways you can get points in this mode. And you don't even need to fully clear all 3 bosses to get all the Polycorn rewards. If you only have 2 fully built teams or one of the bosses has a resistance you can't fight
BVM, what's going on?
You don't have to fully clear them. Chiyu Defense and Deadly Assault also rotate weekly with each other instead of bi-weekly like all the other games.
Don't like ZZZ because I don't enjoy doing like no damage as in throwing a sponge against the wall for 10 minutes. That's fair. Hey, end of the day, it's all subjective, right? It's all subjective. I personally, I've got a real soft spot for Zenless. From characters to enjoying the story. I do think post 1.4, it's not been as strong as it was prior. Again, I haven't played Zenless now since 2.0. I've got to get back. I've been spotty on a lot of games recently. Character design, for me, Belle, one of my favourite MCs in Gacha gaming. I think she's fucking brilliant. She's adorable. She's well voiced. She's just a cool character. I love the setting. I've got, and I do enjoy the combat as well, and some of the modes in the game. I like their experimentation they do in the game, also in regards to little things, events and stuff that they've done over the time. You know, the Fall Guys thing was brilliant. I've got a lot of warm feeling towards Zenless Zone Zero. I really have.
ZZZ has a
Better
lot
than
of
it's all
potential
subjective,
with the
right? So,
possible
you know.
rotating mode. I really hope they don't mess it up. Finally,
This
there's the
video made you
simulated
download Battle
trials,
Cats.
which, like I said, I also think is some of the best endgame content in modern gacha gaming. Again,
Okay.
it's basically just being a skill check. I'm pretty sure Billy Main was able to solo floor 1000, which is really crazy.
Holy cow.
I think it's really good.
That's
I have no reason to give ZZZ anything but a 3
That's
out of
true.
3.
That's kind of crazy.
Finally, when it comes to F2P accessibility, well, you can beat the game with basically anyone you want. You can see
That's
people
fair.
clearing
That's
with
fair,
many
Owen.
different characters, even main DPS bed bigger, which I think is great. Although you shouldn't ignore the HP inflation. Now, I actually think that this amount of HP inflation that is currently in ZZZ is pretty healthy due to the players getting a lot stronger from getting better disk drives, more access to support units, etc, etc. But F2P...
It does seem like as well the HP inflation does tend to like now I know it has been steadily going up, but it does seem to ebb and flow a little bit depending on the mechanics in the particular bosses as well, doesn't it? As well, so you know, it is a thing that's there, but like again, this is a game that launched where people were like kind of craving that anyway, right? Because a lot of people initially were like, yeah, it's a little bit too easy, right? We need a little bit of this.
Accessibility is very objective, just like I said in the rules, and so just because players can clear with every unit doesn't mean that I'll give it a 3 out of 3 here. The biggest reason for that is disk drive investment requirements are very high if you're using older units to clear. Going back to earlier, I would say that ZZZ is 50% skill-based and 50% disc drive or gacha luck-based, so I'll just give it a 2 out of 3 here. You just need to grind discs for a while if you want to use older characters. I
think that's pretty fair.
Hate all RNG gearing systems. HP inflation might get worse in the future. After all, it is a
like,
Ho-Yo game.
I think that's pretty fair, because like the disc drives can be a pain in the ass, but for me, they're not as bad as like Echoes, just in the way that you get them personally. I think that's pretty fair, if I'm honest.
But let's stick to the present in this video. So, Zenless Zone Zero's final score will be 8.25.
Damn, that's a high score,
Coming
really.
Up next, we've got my favorite gacha game of all time, the Battle Cats, with some of the best strategy gameplay in the gacha space.
Bro, he's single-handedly holding up Battle Cats, right? Is this game any good? Like, I feel like this dude's gaslit me into playing this game, because this is the second time I've seen it in one of his videos, and like, I feel like I have to play it now, right? It's the rules, I have to play it.
Cats also has some pretty good endgame content. The rotating modes are the tower-like modes, being Heavenly Tower, Infernal Tower, Golden Tower, Legend Quest, Citadel, and Gauntlet. However, all of these modes are kind of weird because they don't really have a set schedule, and if you want to play them, you're kind of just forced to sit there to wait for them. Some players also don't consider them endgame content exactly, but I think they definitely fit the definition, as they are still incredibly hard, they test your account, and they give you a lot of rewards. As for other endgame content, which I guess you could consider late endgame content, there's the Uncanny Legends and Zero...
It's like one of those games that looks like an acid trip, you know? It's good, not gonna lie, the Civil War story about, story that time felt flat. This is a phone game, I heard good things about it. Battle Cats is tower defense speaks, therefore it's like Arknights for real.
Legend stages, as
the
well
game
as
is
the
cat tier
stages, which all don't rotate, and there's also the Behemoth Culling stages, which do rotate. I won't go into detail into all of these because there are a lot, but I will provide
quite like the art style.
Hopefully. Even as someone who calls Battle Cats my favorite gacha game, though I haven't played all of these, I'm not gonna lie, this game is really f***ing hard. So, to start off with enemy quality, automatically Battle Cats is going to receive a 3 out of 3. It has some of the best systems in place, and as simple as the game is, they've capitalized upon everything they could. From buffs and debuffs enemies and characters could apply, to ranges, attack frequencies, and everything in between. Strategizing in this game is more than just selecting an anti-red enemy lineup when the enemies are red, it's about choosing exactly when to release your most powerful unit to kill the enemy. And the enemies are designed exactly to take advantage of that, and each of these endgame stages that we've mentioned have a huge pool of unique enemies.
So wait, it's 5 minutes. See, is this number 1?
Even when enemies are reused, fodder enemies stay fodder, and bosses are lumped together to take advantage of each
I saw
other,
CC
like really
at the start, so I was thinking Arknights was going to be in the list somewhere.
One that all ends up mixing incredibly well. I could sit here and glaze it some more, but that's enough, I think. Let's skip mode quality for now and talk about F2P accessibility, where Battle Cats will also receive a 3 out of 3. Not only are there tons of free units you're always able to collect, but you can beat the game with basically anybody you want.
I feel like Arknights potential is in this list, right?
Beating Heavenly Tower without
because you've got 5 minutes left. We can squeeze another game or two in here, right?
AKA super rare cats and Battle Cats.
Surely Arknights is in this, right? I'm Colbin.
Definitely require a few Uber units. However, there are gacha events where Uber units are guaranteed, and if you don't have at least, let's say, 30 Uber units by the time you reach 0 legends, you're probably doing something wrong. As for mode quality, well, the modes are really complicated in the Battle Cats. The Heavenly Towers and its variants, which are the ones up on screen right now, are basically
I think I need to play this.
Players really don't know when one might show up.
I think I need to play this. Can confirm the new TOA sucks as bad as the original, really?
There are
I've heard that there's a little bit of inflation this
one.
That
doesn't mean you're going to run out of content in Battle Cats. That's probably impossible and will never happen. However, it's still pretty boring to keep waiting for a tower to arrive, so you can try and beat it with whatever new units or upgrades you got. But whichever mode you do play, they are all super fun, and some of them having completely unique enemies to each other, like the Behemoth Culling stages focusing on behemoths, and the Malevolent stages focusing on Aqua enemies, and the Infernal Tower focusing on Relic enemies. So I'll give Battle Cats a 2 out of 3 here. Battle Cats' final score will be a 9 out of 10.
Damn, bro.
Next
up,
bro
really likes Battle Cats. Hey,
contracts.
Boys, it's in the list. It's in the list. I'd say they had to be in the fucking list, man. Jesus Christ.
Trails of Navigator, integrated strategies, as well as vector breakthrough and reclamation algorithm. That is certainly a lot. The main ones are contingency contracts and integrated strategies. Those are the ones I'm going to focus on, but definitely don't look past the others because they still provide some great gameplay.
Okay, because that's all I've played, so...
contracts to be the tower mode, but it's not exactly an accurate description of it, as it plays slightly differently and also has things way more unique than any other game on the list's tower modes. Integrated Strategies is a roguelike mode, however, it's not like Divergent Universe or Limbus's Mirror Dungeons, as Integrated Strategies doesn't really buff up your units anywhere near as much as those two modes do, and it's definitely nowhere near as repetitive. Now, let's get on to the ratings.
It's actually kind of fire. It's actually kind of fire. Obviously, I think the core design of the game allows for the game to have just an insanely well-made roguelike mode in there. But they actually, like, went in right. Again, it wasn't just that, how do we make the character more powerful for each run? You know, there is, like, a good amount of variety. And this is obviously coming from somebody who's only dabbled as well, but already loving it. Loving it.
When it comes to enemy quality, then Arknights will fare quite well here.
Reason why so many games have tried to do their own version of IS, right? You know, there's a reason that so many games have tried to do their own version of IS.
I guess you can consider enemies in Arknights to be used similarly.
Yeah, I've done some
integrated
strategies, yeah.
Battle Cats, while Malevolent stages in Battle Cats use Aku enemies and Behemoth Culling stages focus on Behemoth bosses, every CC iteration in Arknights focuses on different mechanics and enemy lineups, with each CC iteration focusing on enemies that release during a relevant story quest or event story. The lineups for Contingency Contract 9, for example, focus on these 4 elites, which are also the same used in the event story Undertides. In Integrated Strategies, enemies are also very numerous, using some enemies from basically every other mode while also having its own enemies. Finally, the way mechanics are designed in Arknights is very fun, again kinda similar in a way to Battle Cats, but not exactly. With how many characters there are in the game, there will be certain niches and characters that are good against a certain group of enemies. While Arknights is simply a tower defense game, they did exactly what Battle Cats did and took a very simple...
Hey! Listen now. Listen now, let's not get carried away. Simply a tower defense game, buddy. Come on, relax with that. Chill out now, brother man. Let's, you know, let's not take the piss. Let's not take the piss.
Formula and took maximum advantage.
Super is typing in Italian right now.
Of it, so I'll give them a 3 out of 3 here. No reason for otherwise. When it comes to mode quality, then honestly, Arknights is probably more complicated than most games. Yep. Contingency contracts have seasons, which rotate multiple times a year.
Again, glazy moment. I don't give a fuck, because I've just gone through Chapter 8, right? I've just had one of the most awesome boss fights in gaming, honestly. I know, world statement, I don't care. Please, if you haven't tried Arknights, just try it, man. Give it a moment, right? Don't, like, you know, try and go straight into the meta. I'm not saying you can't do that, because that can be fun in games as well. Just really try and experience what the game's got to offer. I'm not saying do E1 runs. I'm not saying play niche nights. I'm not saying, like, freaking do E0s or freaking 4-stars only or whatever, right? But, like, oh, man, just do it. Just do it. Trust me. Like, hey, it might not be for you, and that's fine. But, oh my God, it's such a gem, man. You really, really, really need to check it out, guys. Honestly, I as somebody who does not like tower defense games, right? And it kind of feels bad to call Arknights just a tower defense game, because it feels so much more, and it is so much more. But, like, obviously, that's what it's considered, and I don't like them. This is my favorite game at the moment. You know what I mean? Like, that's saying a lot. I think in so many ways it craps on so many games in this space. And I'm not even saying that in a negative thing of taking away from those games. It's just that this does so many things so well.
Heavenly Tower
Alright, glazing over, glazing over.
which happen at a random, except Heavenly Tower is very limited.
I think that is a total fair thing to not like. Full sweep sucks. No full sweep sucks, right? Two things about Arknights, big negatives. Locking stages behind specific days to farm. Just don't do that. It doesn't serve any purpose other than to extend the time that it takes me to build stuff. It's don't need to do that. This game definitely doesn't need it anyway, because there's so much content, it just doesn't need that. And yeah, sweeps, right? Even if the fact that we're going to a one clear sweep, just make it a sweep. Like, just give me a sweep. I don't need to even have the clear. Especially don't need to do 5 or 6 clears, right? Like, I've seen people, like I said, somebody said that to me before. They were like, I'll just go and do something else while I'm doing that. I think it's fine. I'm like, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to log in the game to do something else? Those two things could go out the game right now. Happy days, you know what I mean?
Meanwhile, contingency contract seasons are much more available.
Favorite game is punching himself in the face and excessive eating. Hey, the latter's not too bad though.
Maps modeled after them. The current season is always available to play once you unlock it. TC
you do it the other way round, you know what I mean?
Rotating test sites, which are exactly what they sound like. You can also add many different extra challenge stacks to each stage you try for extra rewards. As for integrated strategies, then
you can try and make yourself feel better.
Integrated strategies is a roguelike, but it isn't.
You've hurt yourself for eating too much.
Hollow Zero, like we said, where you buff to oblivion. Instead, it's more of a traditional roguelike mode where the content is still incredibly difficult. It still feels like a proper endgame content where you need to get around the mechanics with the
sweep function is coming only almost 6 years later, right? It's not going to be a proper sweep though, is it? Like, obviously, I'm pretty sure, right? It's, you go on it once, it clears auto, and then it just sweeps that. So like, you do 6 clears. It's one auto, 5 sweeps. Yeah, that's right. That's how it works, right? Because just go a step further, man. Just make it like, I love it when a game. I'll try a gacha game, right? And I've cleared the material stage once, and then I'll just click it, and boom, it's done. It's just like, oh yes. This is a good thing. This is a good quality of life. Because to me, all I think is when a game forces you to do material farming over and over again like that, it's just a way to extend playtime, right? It's like the reverse 1999. Yeah. It's definitely a better system, right? But give me a full-on sweep all day long, right? There's just no need for it, right? But yeah, it's gonna be the same as reverse, and yeah, I thought as much.
Characters you unlock, and you can't really brute force it with whatever buffs you get along the way. Now, these two modes don't rotate that quickly, but remember that they're not the only two available, they're just the ones we're focusing on for simplicity's sake. And there's also always something to do inside of them either way. So I don't see a reason to give Arknights anything below a 3 out of 3.
The rock mining will move much faster, let's go.
Mode quality. And you probably saw this coming, but it's a 3 out of 3 when it comes to F2P accessibility too.
Yeah, true. F2P accessibility is insane. Are they going to be ever getting rid of the material daily locks as well? Sorry to pause it again. You know? Are they ever going to be getting rid of that? Like, because that's another thing that I just think is a bad system, right? You know? I really like the game, but I think it's fair. We have to point out the negatives. That's just a bad system as well. I'd love that to change.
Because it's Arknights. Of course it is. Not only is the gacha system super rewarding, but players have proven countless times that you can beat the game if you understand the mechanics well enough with just 4-star units. Arknights also doesn't have any RNG gearing systems like artifacts or echoes, so basically all progress is guaranteed. Arknights' final score is a 10 out of 10 because
damn!
The only reason one wouldn't enjoy Arknights' endgame content is because it's a tower defense game, but that ends up just being subjective. In the end, the Arknights...
I think that's right. I think really when it comes to Arknights endgame, really, and like, events are slightly different because sometimes the events are a little bit quirky, right? It's just whether you like the game or not, you like the gameplay loop itself, which is, of course, obviously, I joke around and I glaze, right? And I'm like, just play the game. Trust me, please play the game. But like, obviously, it's just not for everybody, right? And I'm with you. When I first saw Arknights from outside looking in, I was like, what the fuck? I don't want to play this game. Man, I'm so glad I did, right? I'm so glad I did because it's been an eye-opener. Because I think if you like the core component of this game, pretty much everything the game's got to offer is gonna satisfy. You know, there's some, like say, some events here and there, mechanics are not as fun as others, and you know, it might not be such an enjoyable event. But I think I agree on the end game, at least when it comes to IS and CC.
Plays never stops. That's all I have for you today. Damn, this was a super long video. I wanted to include more games like Punishing Grey Raven and Reverse 1999, but it just got way too long to keep going, I'm sorry. Maybe next time I make one of these lists, it'll include these 2 games as well. So thank you so much for watching and making it this far. I appreciate you so much. Make sure to
Man, if we upload this as a video, this is going to be a big one, boys. It's going to be a big one.
Close to hitting 3,000 members. Thank you.
Yeah, for the games that I've played, I think, you know, I think on like the Genshin side when he was talking about the combat, I think that's a subjective feeling, right? I definitely do, because like at the end of the day, you know, at the end of the day, enjoyment of games is totally subjective, but like, you know, this is attempting to be as objective as possible. I think most things were pretty fair, right? I don't think there was anything egregious in this video. I really like holograms. It's hard to really consider them. I guess you can now, because the way the hologram system works post Renacita, right? In that, like, I guess you can class it as as endgame content now. It wasn't really before that. I would love more to be done with holograms, because I think it has so much potential to, like, not just the base form of the hologram fights, but to be expanded upon, right, with like buffs and debuffs and tweaks to the way enemies work and all this sort of stuff, and tweaks to characters. Just like having power trip fantasies as well in some of them as well could be really fun. Diversity blows ass. Whimpering Waves blows ass. Depths of Elusive Realm was goated, but you know, Kuro seemed to fucking hate that mode. That Trials Crisis mode, whatever it was called as well, was goated as well, but you know, so yeah, I think when it comes to Wuthering Waves Endgame, the potential there for it to be insanely good is there. To just kind of ignore all the really good stuff that could be used for Endgame and just lent into the trash. You know what I mean? Which is wild to me. But yeah, obviously I ain't played Limbus. I ain't played FGO enough. I've never played Battle Cats. So all of those are kind of like, I can't comment on. But I think most people in the chat who have played those games said, you know, it's a pretty fair video. So yeah, I'm not against that. Somebody who's a hyperglazer, I think they're number one out of these games, at least anyway, right? Again, FGO and Limbus, haven't played them. I think it's deserved to take the top spot. Now, of course, there's probably plenty of gacha games out there where somebody come along and go, actually, bro, this is way better. But yeah, great video. Guys, go check out Moose on Caffeine. I think he makes good videos, man.